Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to see we have a good attendance here. I hope we can have a sociable discussion on what our plans are. Basically, we really want to hear from you and why you feel that this is the wrong place, the wrong time, and what the real concerns are, whether the flooding, traffic, safety, sidewalks. We want to know that. We need, in order to address what your real concerns are, we need to have that information. And then we want to get back to you at another meeting with the answers to the questions that are going to be thrown at us this evening with our professionals, whether it be our site planners, our engineers, our architect, who's here this evening also, Rudy Widberg. But we need to know what the real concerns are. And what I'd like to say is that, look, right now Greenwich has a real problem, and not only just in Greenwich, but here in the entire state of Connecticut. There's a bill that came down from Hartford called 89, that's the old one, 830G, which has put the hammer in the hands of every contractor in the town of Greenwich, including us, but we're not basically operating as a contractor. We're operating as the housing authority, Greenwich Communities, to try to combat the lemons with this 830G that the state of Connecticut has thrown upon us. We believe we found a way to make lemonade out of the lemons that they gave us. Now, we're in a position to build affordable housing and quality housing, if you've seen what we've been doing around the town. But our units get counted 100% towards that 10% number that the state has asked us to maintain. Not only do we get the every unit go to that 10%, we also get what you call housing bonus points. And those points, the town of Greenwich presently needs 500 points in order to request a moratorium. Our goal here, or Greenwich Community's goal, is to get to that moratorium to stop the madness that's happening here all around town. Right now, the contractors are basically in central Greenwich doing their building. But it's not going to stay in central Greenwich once they use up all the land around the center of Greenwich. You all read the paper last week, headline, 120 units, Benedict Place, Benedict Court, that runs parallel with Greenwich Avenue. 120 units, 6-story building. And I'm not in favor of that. And I know most of you here aren't in favor of that. There's another proposal presently before P&Z at the bottom of Mason Street, the old Honda dealership. 2 buildings. One is going to be a 6-story building right across the street from another 5-story building. High-end units on one side of the street, low-end units on the other side of the street. 84 units, the old Gasparini property, Post Road Iron Works, another 84 units. Presently, right now, before planning and zoning, there's approximately 700 or more units of affordable housing or portable housing projects being proposed to the town. We want to stop that. We're not in favor of all this massive development. We're not the enemy here. We're trying to work with the town to get at that 10% and get the bonus points so we can take the hammer out of the hands of the housing authority. And with your help, we can do it. I'm not the housing authority, out of the contractors, I'm sorry. But we can't do it alone, and we're not the enemy here. We're basically on your side to try to stop what's happening all around town. Because with all this development that's being proposed, it's going to have a massive input on our infrastructure, our schools, our water, our light, everything that our police, our fire. So look, like I say, we're here to work with the community. We don't want to be adversaries of the community, and we could just as well be sitting on that side of the dais here. So I want to approach that as an open dialogue here to try to work with the community so we can put the hammer back in the hands of planning and zoning. Give them the power to say no to a massive project. I don't want to see 200 units being built up on King Street, the old American can. I don't want to see 167 units up on King Street. another one. But once they get through with Central Greenwich, like I started to say, they're coming after the 1 acre zone, the 2 acre zone, even the R12 zone, where you can put more than one unit on an R12 lot. And there have been proposals, and I know they have been passed, but I don't know if they ever acted on them. But they had an R12 unit where 3 or 4 units was going to be built. So I open it up, and again, like I say, we're don't want to be adversary. We want to work with the community and try to come to some agreement. But this project that we are proposing on Strickland Avenue, Strickland Road, is a project that we're working with the town on to try to get 40 or more, whatever we can do, units of workforce housing to try to get to that 10%. I see you shaking your head no already. So if you want to be the first, I'd be glad to hear from you.
Other commissioners chime in if you want. I just want to make the point. My name is Jim Buttel. I'm the vice chairman of Greenwich Communities. And like all of you, I spent 25 years in the town meeting. I got involved in local politics. My very first thing I remember doing in this town is out protesting, tearing down the Pickwick Arms Hotel. So that will tell you my age, close. I remember opposing when Lowell Weicker was the first selectman and the Ash Force built the train station property. We wanted to keep the small town charm. But Greenwich, we all have to admit, is not a small town anymore. We're 60,000 plus people in this town. And the Board of Commissioners, we are all local. By statute, 2 of our members are residents of public housing, one of state and one of federal. But Angelo, Irene, we're all local. Most of us, I think, are born and raised in Greenwich.
Armstrong Court.
So the one thing I want to make about the Housing Authority, I've now been on for 12 years. We address public housing for families, public housing for seniors. We operate Parsonage Cottage. We do have some market rate housing. Greenwich Close, directly across the street, is one of our properties. The one group we haven't addressed are the young people who can't afford to stay in Greenwich. That's the target audience for this group. I remember when I graduated from college, I wanted to come back to Greenwich, but I wasn't in a position to buy a property in Greenwich. And after 10 years, I didn't buy in Greenwich till I was 40 years old. So, you know, I'm looking to build housing that the new firemen, the new policemen, the new teachers, because there will be income limits to this. And most of those people as tenants will income limit out of those units. So there will be turnover. The idea is to have some housing for the people in our workforce, the people that work in our stores, that want to live in town, that wait tables in the restaurants that we live in town, that allow them to live in town. You know, the only final point I make is I spent 14 years as a baseball coach in Greenwich Babe Ruth. And we always struggled to get kids out of Armstrong Court and Wilbur Peck and others to participate. We went out and got scholarships. We gave these kids equipment. The reason we changed our name to Greenwich Communities is we are one community. And that's what we're looking to continue with this project.
I might add too that our first selectman is on Zoom, although he won't be able to be participating. He'll be listening and on Zoom. So just want to mention that Fred is listening in. With that, you want to come to the microphone so we can hear you? Certainly, certainly. Why don't we go right down the line? We have to my extreme right hand, Irene Dietrich. She's our commissioner. Irene, you want to push this hello?
Oh, wow.
Just that it just makes so much sense to look at this project with an open mind. What was just said, Jim, that was spectacular. We need to be in charge of the changes or the housing that we're providing. We know what we want. We know how we want it to look. That's my 2 cents.
Angelo?
My name is Angelo Pucci, and as Jim mentioned, I grew up in this town and in Armstrong Court, but I've been fortunate enough to do well in my business and buy a home here in Greenwich and get involved in a lot of things. I served on the the Board of Education in this town years ago, and I served on other boards, and I'm very happy to serve on this board. This board does a lot of good work. These two gentlemen up here who chair it and our executive director, we're so proud to be here to do this for the town.
Tony?
Good evening. I'm Tony Johnson, Anthony Johnson, Executive Director of Greenwich Communities. And we do have a great board who are born and raised here for the most part, including the public housing residents, board members. So we believe this is a fair project for the town, something that the town should consider to do. It's not something that the Housing Authority of Greenwich Community needs to do. It's something we're trying to do for the town. And as Sam said, the development creep is not going to stop. We're not saying it's on your backs to start it or stop it, but it has to start or stop somewhere. And it's just something to consider. And that's all we're here to do, is present ideas to you and see if they're accepted. Thank you.
I might add also that I too am a lifelong member of this town. I'm 80 years old, lived here all my life. I don't plan on leaving it. I love the town more than you can realize. And I do put a lot of time. We're all volunteers here. I can't tell how many hours that I put in here. I put more hours in with the Housing Authority than I do in my own business. But one thing you rest assured, I will not do anything to harm this town. I really love the town and I plan on staying here. And when I'm gone, I'll be up in St. Mary's Cemetery. So I'm still going to be here.
Still in Greenwich.
Still in Greenwich. With that, I'll open it up. Go ahead, Andrew.
Please identify your name, state your name, press the microphone to turn it on. Good evening.
Hit the,
Good evening, everybody. My name is Dr. Shubha Fansalkar. I live on Butler Street. I've lived here for over 30 years. And I have a question about an engineering aspect of this project, which I think is very important. And I'm glad the architect is here, because I looked at your plans, and if I may, specifically, buildings 2 and 3 are outside of the footprint of the parking lot, correct?
Yes.
Across from the train station. They are superimposed upon trees, but those trees are not on a flat land. Those trees are on a big rocky hill. Picture this: parking lot, rocky hill, trees. I-95 cuts across the top, the crest of that hill, with pylons in the hill. We are on the other side of that same hill. Our backyards and our foundations are on that hill with the trees. Okay? We have terraced backyards.
Butler Street is on the other side of the,
Yes,
Of the highway?
my house and 4 or 5 of my neighbors. Up to now, our basements have never flooded. They've been bone dry. I consulted an engineer because if you are going to put those 2 buildings there, that rock has to be blasted. I-95 pylons go, I-95 goes on top of that hill. I was informed that a radius of half a mile is at risk for immediate danger or subsequent danger from this kind of blasting, as are our properties, our foundations, our homes. You knock off those trees, you change the terrain, you change the topography, you change the geography. I want to know, is the developer and the town liable for damage to our foundations, our basements? I love my home on Butler Street. I worked 2 and 3 jobs and started a medical practice, saved every dime to buy that house. A lot of TLC has gone into my garden, which I cherish. I cherish my neighbors and my neighborhood. I am sleepless worrying about this. And I didn't just worry and agonize, but I consulted an engineer because this is an engineering issue, not a political, social, or
Okay,
economic issue.
we got that. He's the architect, not the engineer. We will address that one because that's what we
That's
want to
my
hear.
point, and I want
No,
to know
that's
who
the-
is liable if there's damage.
Well, certainly the developer would be liable for anything. And the reason why we're here this evening is to get that, so you have a concern on an engineering problem, we have a professional that will address that particular concern when we come back with the answers to all your questions that you're going to be bringing up to us this evening. Yes, ma'am, want to come up and state your name?
I'm Ann Tobacco. I live at 83 Strickland Road. I'm your neighbor with 85.
Are you the lady that I
actually-
asked what color to paint the house?
Yes,
I
that's
said, what color do
right.
you want us to paint the house?
That's right. I agreed with the gray.
Thank you.
So, and we've been there, and we've been good neighbors for about 10 years. That's a whole different situation, though. But I did want to I wanted to carry that point a little bit forward, because I have that in my notes as well about the rock and the trees behind that separate that lot from I-95. Seems to me, I'm not an engineer or an architect, Rudy Rydberg, but I would imagine that that acts as a sort of a natural retaining wall for I-95, for the runoff of I-95. The water has to go somewhere. Where is it going to go when that's gone? Does it now, now you may feel that you have the right drainage for this development, but where does that water go? And is it going to come into my property? Is it going to jeopardize my home? And also, again, the blasting and all of that and the foundations. But I just wonder about, once it's there, if it is there, what could be done? What could possibly be done?
So you
And
would be
is
happy
my
if we
home-
didn't touch the rock?
What's that?
If we didn't touch the rock, you'd be happy with that?
Well, I think it would be safer. I'm not
Okay,
saying I'd be
all right.
happy, but I have other issues and other questions. But now to just speak to what Jim Buttel just said a minute ago, that we want young people who can't afford to stay in Greenwich. I totally get that. I have a daughter who I'd like to be able to stay in Greenwich, but I don't know. And you said that's the target audience. Well, is that the target audience? Because you're talking about police and firemen and teachers, but then there's income limits. What are the income limits? Because don't our teachers and policemen and firemen probably, don't their incomes probably exceed those limits? And do they want 2-bedroom apartments? You know, they would tend to be families. Do these 2-bedroom apartments help this target audience? So that's a question I have based on your comments. And then just quickly, I don't want to take over the whole,
Actually,
Evening.
the target audience is, the target would be workforce people, not strictly young people who want to stay in town.
right?
It's workforce. It's
Well,
the
Police, firemen,
sales workers, it's the bank tellers, it's people that work at McDonald's, people that work in our stores, store clerks.
Okay, but it says that you have many times mentioned fire, police, and teachers. So I just didn't, think that that really would be appropriate housing for them, for the most part. So, and also removing the rock and the trees, of course, that's going to create more noise pollution and more air pollution because the trees, as we all know, help clean our air. And as far as the parking goes, you have to keep the parking for the commuters, right? That's a given. And you're talking about a garage, an underground garage, which would, I guess, mean some more blasting.
Well, it's not
and
really
again-
underground. It's ground level now. We'll be building over it. So,
So there's no underground
no,
anymore?
of course not. Where'd
Well, there
where'd that come
was.
from?
Never was a
Okay,
game.
just misunderstanding.
Yeah, there was. Okay, whatever. Anyway, today, I know you have the pictures here from February 9th, which is a Friday, where there are not a lot of commuters on Fridays because we are not fully back to yeah, I wondered about that. 5 days a week, anyway. Today, I counted,
Right,
and there's approximately 140 spaces in that lot. I don't know the exact number, I tried to count today. There were about 100 cars parked there today on a Tuesday and the day after a holiday. So, many people are talking about they're having to go back to work now 4 days a week. Maybe it's going to become 5 days a week, I don't know, but that's the trend. So I did see that an article in one of the Greenwich Free Press, I think, called it an underused lot. I don't think that's true anymore. I think that was true during COVID, but it really isn't true anymore. Also, the little lot across the street was packed, and the Cascade Marina, where you can park there, where I'm sure there's a lot of people who are on the wait list, who'd love to be parking in this lot. So I feel that I understand and I appreciate what you're saying about the 830G and how that is affecting our town. And, we want these points, we desperately want these points to get to this moratorium, which will be temporary. I think I've heard it's only 4 years long before it would be revisited again. I'm not sure. But then why are you proposing a development that does kind of do what they do? It's too many units for that spot. It's a one family and a 2-family zoned neighborhood. And this is a 48-unit, 2-bedroom development. So, we don't want to have you acting like these developers. So I get it, and if you cram them in, we get more points, but then you're sacrificing our neighborhood to the 830G gods. You want to help the town, and I understand that, but you want to help us too, so that it's appropriate for our neighborhood. Again, I live next door to one of your properties. It's fine, it's good, but this is too much to take.
That's 8 units on three pieces of property, something like that, Andy.
I'm not sure.
Is there anything else?
But yes, one more thing, huge thing, flooding. Okay, I have many pictures, other people do too.
No, you don't have to tell me about
of the
flooding.
videos.
That always will flood.
Videos and pictures of the flooding. It has happened 4 times this year between January and May. It's getting worse, it's gonna get worse, so as we know. So how do we feel that this is safe? The turn in the road, the 90-degree turn, the narrow road, the speeding commuters, there's just so many reasons why this is too much.
All pertinent questions, and those are things that the professionals will address. As far as flooding goes, Strickland Road always flooded and will continue to flood.
Right.
The parking lot is outside. There's one corner of that parking lot that's in the flood zone.
I think it's the corner where you have the entrance to the parking.
Right, but
So-
there's another
Same.
entrance on the other side.
But that's for the residents,
No,
right?
and
The
no,
other
it's-
one's gonna be
it's
for the commuters?
It's for the parking lot, entrance and exit for everybody. So if the emergency vehicles have to come in, they come in from the higher end and outside the elevation of the flooding. Flooding will never be resolved on Strickland Road.
Right, but then how do we put something this
That's
huge
not gonna
there?
add to
That's,
the
of
flooding.
course it will. It's It absolutely will.
Can I just jump in here
Anyway.
because I am in the neighborhood and unlike the prior speaker, unfortunately, my house was built in the 1930s of fieldstone foundation, so we do get flooding. And I'm at the very crest of the hill on Butler Street. I'm as high up as you can get. Concern about the trees, I wish our neighbors had expressed as much concern when the state clear cut the trees along I-95.
Well, that just happened out of the blue afterwards, after the
But-
fact, people
But
complained.
if our local town can enforce on the governor restoring the trees he cut down in his own property, we should be going to the governor and saying, why aren't you replanting trees along 95?
Absolutely.
One
I
of our
I don't think
neighbors,
anyone disagrees with that.
between where you are and I am, started pruning trees that weren't even on their property and it was on state property. And they got an injunction against them. So trust me, I hear the noise. When I go out on my back deck, I hear the noise from I-95. So I am as concerned as you are. But I said to some people before this meeting, this project, first, we're going to have to get a lease from the town for the property, and that will define people concerned about it extending beyond the parameters of the property. That lease will have to go through the Board of Selectmen and the RTM. So everybody will have a chance to make further input when we come in with what we hope will be final plans. Unlike an 830G, we will be subject to all the rules and regulations of the Planning and Zoning Commission. You know, the big problem with 830G is that the developers are not covered. That's why they can build 6-story buildings, which we've never had in this town. And that's why we're overly concerned. Our
Well, if you're
plans,
subject to the P and Z regulations of the town, then this is already against the regulations.
it will have to get variances from the Planning and Zoning Commission to move forward, and the public will have a chance to have input at that point again. I'm just trying to make the point there. We want to modify, but we need to have enough density that the project makes financial sense for us to operate. We lose money on almost all of our properties. Fortunately, we have a few properties that, like Greenwich Close, that are market rate that cover the shortfall on the other properties. We get $0 from the town of Greenwich. None of your taxpayer dollars go into subsidizing the operation of Greenwich communities. It's state money to help us construct, federal money to help us construct, and that's pretty much it.
Developers? Developers?
Developers what?
They obviously put money in. We know this. When you build a new property.
10%?
Yeah, there's 10% that comes out of it to go.
Excuse me, developers don't have anything to do with us. They contribute nothing.
What was the 10%?
I don't know what 10% you're talking about.
Have them come to my.
Yeah.
Come to the microphone if you want to.
Make a statement. I mean, I don't, throwing out a number, 10% means absolutely nothing. Gentleman in the back wants to speak.
That has nothing to do with it.
I don't know, what is it you're talking about?
I take it back.
Let's just throw rocks.
Some curiosity questions. I guess you just mentioned, James Walsh, COSCOP. You just mentioned that you would be going in front of planning and zoning and, doing the regular process, right? Are you still planning on bringing this forward as an 830G project?
Yes.
So then you're not doing the regular
misspoke.
project in front, okay, so then you're not doing the regular process in front of planning
No.
and zoning, you're shortchanging, and I think that's where a lot of the neighbors are getting frustrated. I think a lot of people in your neighborhood are for a project like this if done in the right scale and scope, but they're not for it coming through the back door of 830G to bypass planning and zoning. Another curiosity question, when you say bonus points, you mean housing equivalency unit points, correct? So I guess a question.
You're familiar with that because you're a developer
I-
also.
I'm not a developer. I've never developed a piece
Plan
of
on doing
property in
some
my life.
development?
I didn't build a house. I barely painted a wall. I have nothing, nowhere near being a developer. But I guess a question I have for you is how many, and again, my hunch is you're doing the 2-bedroom units to maximize your points instead of trying to maybe maximize the utility and the use and the breadth of people who can utilize this, right? 2-bedroom units.
Two-bedroom units are workforce.
Right, not great for families, though. Once you
Right.
have one kid, you're kind of out after one or two. It'd be great to see more, units in there. A diversity, 1, 2, 3, 4-bedroom units. So how many points are you receiving from this project, and how close does that bring you to the moratorium?
It all depends on the number of units that we build, whether we blend or mix 2 or even convert to 3. This is all in the development stage, so nothing is final.
Right, well, at the current
Even the
proposed.
number of units is not final.
Okay, so even the
Can I ask
number
you
of
a
units
question?
are final. Yes.
As I recall from my last time we were here, I think it was 76 points.
Okay,
And the town needs approximately 500 points to get a moratorium.
okay.
I'm sorry, water. I think that answers your question.
So I guess my other question is, though, why are you bringing this forward as an 830G project and not going through the regular
We still get
channels?
we get double, we get the points and we get to take a bite out of the 10%. 100% of our units are counted towards the number of units that the town is required to build. A developer, well, let me make it simple.
No.
Say the town has to build 1,000 units of affordable housing to get the moratorium. So a developer comes in and says, okay, Greenwich, I'm going to build 100 units. 30 units were going to go to the count of the 10%. So we'll deduct the 30 from the 1,000 that you need. Now we're down to 970. But now the developer adds 70 units of housing to the number that we required to do. So now the 70 goes onto the 970. We're up to 1040 units we have to build. So every time a developer comes in and they build affordable housing, the number gets higher. It's like a hamster on a wheel. So no town will ever be able to meet the 10%. Unlike the housing authority. The housing authority, every one of their units counts 100% towards that 10% requirement that we have to get. Plus, we get the housing points to get to the 500 to ask for the moratorium.
Correct, but you don't have to submit this as an 830G project to get those points. You can submit this and go through the regular planning and zoning channels, right? And as long as it's 100% affordable with no set-asides, you will still receive the same number of
You're
points
right,
at the
you're
end of the day.
absolutely right. However, we won't get the units that we need to make it financially viable.
Right, but so with that line.
So I guess, look, I feel like almost anything is better than a surface parking lot, right? And I feel like, this town needs workforce housing but this town needs workforce housing that is going to, seamlessly blend with the community. Not the type of housing that's maybe, going in across town. And I guess it just, sits
I'm
funny
sorry,
with
can I
me.
interrupt you and
Yes.
specify? You said not the type of housing that's going in across
No,
town. What do you mean
that
by
doesn't
that?
fit like Oak Ridge, right? That was just approved. That doesn't fit in well with that neighborhood. They've combined 2 lots and they're building, a building on there that does not really blend seamlessly with the neighborhood, right? You guys are, working with us to get a building that blends seamlessly with the neighborhood, right? You guys have a property on Cross Lane that blends seamlessly with the community. I bet you if you ask people in this room about your property on Cross, they wouldn't even know you have it.
Or
'Cause
Strickland Road.
Or Strickland, because they blend in so nicely with the community, right? My fear here is that you are trying to maximize your points and maybe score political points in the process.
We don't need political points.
Well, if you get a moratorium,
We
that's
need
great.
that moratorium.
Right, so that's great political capital if you get the moratorium for Fred and those in office, right? Let's just be honest. So, if you, because the moratorium only lasts 4 years and then you're right back to where you started.
Well, these housing
let
units.
me interrupt and take
Excuse me,
politics
Jim,
out
Jim,
of it.
hold on.
Hang on. Let me just finish this one point. We don't want to bring politics into this. I couldn't tell you what the political persuasion is of any of the other commissioners. And for this project, We won't get these points until the project is done and completed, and my guess would be Fred will be out of office by that point. So
Then why don't
to
you go through the
suggest this
regular
is simply
planning and zoning
Fred wanting
process?
to score political points, I think is unfair.
That might be unfair, but then why are you bringing it forward as an 830G to bypass planning and
We're
zoning?
not
And
bypassing planning and zoning. I think that's where you're missing. Nothing, I think we've said this will go through planning and zoning, go through the regular process.
well,
We've
for
not-
830G,
It's, you're focusing on 830G. We're saying it's going through the zoning, planning and zoning process. If it was 830G,
as an
wanna speak?
830G project.
Planning and zoning process.
I
you know,
guess
what is the normal planning and zoning?
Jim up here
process?
just said it was going to go through the
Hold on a
normal
second.
planning and
What
zoning
is it-
process.
And I'm saying it's going to do the same thing. The whole purpose, I guess I'm missing. What do you think 830G is and that we're utilizing? I guess that's an easier question for me to ask.
So
What are we getting out of using 830G?
what you're getting out of using 830G is, only having planning and zoning be able to reject this project for very specific, strict guidelines, namely health and safety, right? If so they're not going to be able to tweak this project as much as they would if this was brought forward as a normal project, like
They
you
already
said it
have.
was going to be.
They already treated
But, well, they officially haven't seen the project yet, though, right? That you've just done the pre-app,
They've seen
you
it
haven't brought it to
twice
them.
already.
But as the pre-app, but it's a
I
pre-app.
get your point. I get your point, but that's not what we're doing. And not only that, I mean, if this was an 830G project, the way a developer does it, they bulldoze it through planning and zoning. We're not doing that. They wouldn't have this meeting. A developer wouldn't be sitting here.
Because
having this
they're not
conversation.
legally obligated to have this
That
meeting
is
like you
absolutely
are.
correct.
Well,
and neither are
actually,
we.
if they were in our position, they would be. And let me explain. I said before where the public's going to have its points of input. We're talking about doing this on public land,
Right.
Greenwich town-owned land. This is not a developer who's gone up and bought up a neighborhood and now wants to max out the housing at 6 stories in that neighborhood. We have to get a lease from the town, which means through the Board of Selectmen and through the town meeting. I spent 25 years on the RTM. Trust me, if a large contingent of Greenwich came out and said, no, we don't want this project at this location, reject the lease, it will be rejected by the RTM. We're hopeful that the RTM understands that we need to build these projects and we need to build them somewhere. We have scaled back the proposal from what was originally proposed. We've listened to you wanting to have the setbacks, have it fit more into the neighborhood. But folks, if we don't build some housing and get to closer to the 10%, and I just have to acknowledge, I see Senator Fazio just came in, and thank you, Ryan, for everything you've done for Greenwich. But if we don't build some of this housing and get towards that 500 points, Greenwich Communities has done a lot to get us towards the 10% over the last 2 or 3 years. All of the money we've put into Armstrong Court, those projects, those properties didn't count at all. And I can remember when I first went on this board, I got interviewed by Dave Tice, and he said, Jim, why do you want to be on it? What's your priority? I said, Dave, I want to take care of the housing we already have and make it more presentable to the town. We had a lot of public housing in this town that looked like public housing. If you go down and you look at Armstrong Court today, if you look at what we did in Quarry Knoll, we had people when we built that new development on the front of Armstrong Court think it was a private development and were calling Tony saying, how do I buy one? We need some rental housing in this town. We can't just be flipping, all this stuff that's been built along Mason Street and Millbank, that's $6 million townhouses. That's not what we want Greenwich to look like.
I agree with you, and I think, yes, we need workforce housing in this town. This is a good spot, but I ask you to blend it with the neighborhood, and please don't bring it forward as an 830G, but bring it forward using the normal channels that a developer not utilizing 830G would use to get it through. And I also think, look, this is the first time you're trying this in town. My hunch is you're going to want to try to replicate this at the other train stations and other town-owned properties. So, you're going to want to get it right here, because if you don't get it right here, it's going to be difficult to do in an old Greenwich, a central Greenwich, or someplace else in town. So that's what I asked for. Thank you for your time, gentlemen.
Thank you.
It's 100% identical. Gee, that's my only question.
Get up to the podium.
Hi. Can we hold the conversation to the person at the podium, please?
I thought it was a good point about the town property, so I felt compelled to speak. My name is John Lucarelli. I have been a resident in town for about 25 years. My in-laws built most of the area around the Mill Pond and all over town. But I've also served as the town properties chairman for the former first selectman and the current selectman. And I have to say, we've been talking about affordable housing all over town and all these mystical, town properties. They're all spoken for. There's special interest groups across town. So there's very few properties that you actually even consider this and develop it. And most of the projects, the developer wants to own it. And I'm not really an advocate of selling property. That's why I love the project. It's a lease, the town gets money from it. It's a public and private or a quasi-government agency and public type of deal. But make no mistake, we're at war. 830G is here. It's destroying neighborhoods. I applaud the planning and zoning, what they've done so far to fight this. But you're looking at the board, I've watched this. This is the only group that's advocating for us. And will solve that numerator equation. Because if you do not add to the numerator and you keep adding to that denominator, I love the hamster wheel analogy, you're just spinning our wheels and they're gonna keep developing. I now live in Byram. I held in District 10 for many, many years. I was on the RTM for 16 years. And I will say, I watch what happens when there's no planning and zoning looking over that Byram River. It's disgusting. And there's nothing to stop it. And, quite frankly, they're gonna blow out their sewage treatment plant, just like we saw in the paper today. We've got to redo our sewage treatment plant and cost her like twice what we originally budgeted. These problems are already cooked. We already got these problems, but these guys are already putting together a plan. And it's not just here. I mean, yeah, Strickland Road, it's gonna be tight over there and your input is essential. Thank God they're listening. Because you know what a developer could do is take all of what their information, they walk and they could go in and take it, get a deal from the town and build whatever they want over there, 6 stories. These guys are listening. I hope you guys, I know there's always a boogeyman and I always hear the drainage and it's a problem all through town. And town properties, it's a disaster. But believe in this process and these are the only people advocating and giving you guys a sense that your opinion matters.
The sense.
We're citizens, I'm a citizen, and I'm telling you, I came from town.
Adversarial.
What, they're not. I think they're taking this as very constructive. And trust me, you're gonna get another bite at the apple through the P and Z process, to the RTM. You got them, but these guys are listening, so when they do make their proposal, all of this feedback is gonna be put into their proposal. And maybe they'll scale it back. I don't know what the plan is, but there was one gentleman mentioned, why can't we do it without 830G? Well, the reason why we want to do it 830G, because we want to count it as 830G. If we do something different, we don't attack the numerator. I don't want to get caught in the minutia. If you do not do it part of the process, this has got to look and feel like 830G. Anyone
Hold on.
They said that the points, we get the points, whether it's an 830G or.
Terrific. I didn't pick up on that. I apologize. But either way, what's the difference? It has to be done, and the housing authority seems to be the most responsible player in town. And they're the ones that are actually listening to us and being our advocate. They're asking me questions. I don't want to get in the crossfire, but at the end of the day, I just want.
Let me say this. This does not have to be an 830G project. It can stay the same as it is, and it doesn't have to be 830G.
I'll leave you with one more comment. When I was 15 years ago, when I was the chair of the Town Properties Committee, Peter Berg can remember this too. There was plans at all the railroad stations to have bridges built over them and buildings built above them. That was the original plans, which was disgusting. It looked like where I was from in New York, which they destroyed 50 years ago. When you start bridging over the train stations and building up 3 and 4 stories, we'd lose all the character of this town. That was proposed over 15 years ago. So what I see here, it might be big, it might need to be tweaked, I don't know, but you guys have to make that decision. But make no mistake, the alternative, I didn't like what I saw even 15 years ago. So this has been at work for that many years. So that was my input from Town Properties.
I'd like to add to that, though, one thing that you are aware of, having chaired, the town's land use.
Yeah,
This is part of the town's planning and zoning process, or plan of conservation and development.
Yeah.
Calls for the housing authority to develop over these parking lots. This is not something that's original to us.
20 years in the making, absolutely.
Right, it's been in the plan. The plan gets vetted every 10 years.
Yep.
No one came out and opposed it in the plan. So
right.
when it's implemented or attempted to be implemented, then it's opposed. So you should have opposed the plan and made them do a plan that we wouldn't attempt to institute.
Absolutely.
But thank you for your
Absolutely.
comments.
Thank you.
I'm Emily Kunchner. I'm a neighbor that lives right nearby who happens to also live around the corner from a planning and zoning member who is not here. I believe she needs to recuse herself at certain points. I was on the entire planning and zoning session where you last came and they asked you to change the outfacing, the look of the building. And she told me planning and zoning will have zero ability to stop this. It will not, it will go in front of them.
Margaret Albert
This
said
was a
that.
neighbor of mine who said, this is an 830G. Planning and zoning can only stop this if there's an immediate,
We already said that it's not going to be an 830G.
okay, well,
already
you
said
said that, but 3 other people said something different. So
No,
we
but-
don't know how to make heads or tails of it.
Well, you're
Seems like
hearing
everybody's
it now.
saying
It's being
something different.
recorded.
Great. But the other thing
So I
is
think if you have something other than 830G, hit those points.
okay, so first of all, I have 2 great ideas where you could
Let's hear it.
go. One of them is the very underutilized parking lot right off exit 3 at Arch Street, which has, I went there on a Thursday about a month and a half ago. There was almost no parking. I know that land is underutilized. I know Boys and Girls Club is being housed there. They've had neighbor and neighbor there. The parking lot is almost never full there. And if you're preserving train station parking, that doesn't matter. It's not a flood zone, easy access on and off the highway, easy access to town, and people can get the train, the bus, or whatever they need to.
I happen to know the town has other plans for that.
Yes, I heard the town's plan was it's the golden jewel of Greenwich and they don't want to do it
No,
there.
they have other
Okay,
development
well,
plans
I
for it.
heard otherwise and I heard it from sources that you probably deal with. So also, I don't know if you know Mike's Organic went out of business. Go buy that land. It's
Oh, I'd love to
empty.
have Mike Organic, but I don't have $10 million.
all right. Well, I
And the
just
town
don't
doesn't
think,
pony
why
up
do
any
you
money.
have to blast and take trees down? And by the way,
Don't have to blast.
how are you getting all of these buildings there?
The plan is not final.
Okay,
Everybody
so-
jumping the gun
Okay,
here.
so, but then why do you present that? We're looking at
This
it.
is a starting point.
Okay.
And we're getting input from the general public on what the concerns are.
Okay,
And
so
we're gonna
scale it
try to.
back.
We're gonna, yeah, exactly.
To what?
To not blast out
Give
where
me-
you're
give me a
gonna,
number. What's your number?
half would be appropriate. The other thing is, I was there the other day, a boat was stuck under the trestle bridge for like the 4th
What a
time
dummy.
since someone's, how are you getting emergency vehicles in and out of there if something bad happens and there's traffic and a deadly corner and flooding and
That's another
something
issue
stuck-
that we're addressing, the
Those are
widening of the
real
road.
issues,
There's
though.
so many issues that we're here to hear the concerns and we're going to address them.
Okay, great.
Again, we're not going to be adversarial here. We want to work with the community. If it's a bad project and people say, don't even come near here, don't even think about it, fine, we'll just walk away and the town will have to deal with it. We don't need this
Why,
project.
but I never heard you, Margarita asked about scaling back at the last meeting. You said, I'm in the business of building
Everything
housing, I'm
has
not
a
scaling it
starting
back.
point.
Okay, but you've been hearing that consistently for some time. So start scaling back now. There's nothing wrong with that.
How do you know we haven't done it already?
Okay, well, I have a petition signed by 321 people who live in the neighborhood who are not interested in that
Okay.
design.
Can I just ask, I applaud you for being active. Didn't come to my door. I would have been happy to
I
talk
didn't
to you.
need to go to a
I
door.
threatened our chairman that, hey, I want to see that petition. I might sign it myself. Where was the activism when the property that's being built
On the post road,
on the post road
next to CVS.
where the bank used to be?
I didn't want it there. I think it's hideous. I think
Where's
it's
the petition?
appalling. I think
But
it's.
where, no, what I'm saying, why
I
didn't you
don't know. I
petition
have two
against that?
kids. I don't know. but-
How many units of affordable housing are going to be in there? Zero. Zero.
And it's crazy and it shouldn't be there either. So
I
you
mean,
want to
so
do the
it's
same thing?
that's adding to the denominator and not to the numerator, and it's putting us. That's what we're going to face if we don't do project. But you've gotten one big thing here tonight. Sam's committed that we're not moving forward with this as an 830G project.
But-
That's win number one. Okay. I think we technically have to go back to the full board to vote on it, but I can tell you.
The P and Z votes and.
No. Our full board,
Will
we
say-
have a board of directors. Sam is the spokesman for the board and the chairman of the board, but Sam can't act unilaterally.
Right.
Okay, he heads the development committee as well as being chairman. So he's the lead on most of these projects. But the other commissioners have a say in this. And I can tell you, we were talking right before the meeting and I said, I don't think this is an 830G project. We're not putting it forward as a, so I was under the impression that it was not an 830G and that's why I said that. And Sam's now confirming if the initial paperwork said 830G, it's not 830G
Okay,
anymore.
so that's on the record.
Yes,
Okay, and this will not be an 830G. project.
correct.
Okay, are you willing to consider half of this and not blasting rock and not taking trees down? By the way, this is not, you put these trees in, you have housing there.
We
There are no
already,
trees.
we already discussed,
Yeah,
Pla-
so your house is.
may
there.
I? We already discussed the rock and the blasting and the trees in our development. We already discussed concessions on number of units already, which is under consideration. We've heard from the public, we've heard from other people, and we're already considering these aspects of the project. Again, like I say, we don't want to be adversarial. We want to work with the community. And we'll get down to a number where it's financially viable. If the number gets below what we can do financially, then we'll just walk away if everybody doesn't want it.
So
And the
you're
town's at
saying
its
you
own
would
peril.
commit to less than 48 units?
Yes.
Okay,
If it works financially.
okay, and if it doesn't, then you're out.
Yeah, but then, without the financing, nothing can happen.
And again, to the point somebody made earlier, we have our architect here. We're probably going to redesign this thing 4 or 5 more times, sorry, Rudy,
I hope
before we
not.
go before P and Z. But you're asking me to commit to the number of units. We may take, on your advice, some of those 2-bedroom units and make them 1-bedroom units. We may put studios in there. We're not fixed on the plan. What we're talking about is the concept at the site. And what we're committing to the public or to my neighborhood, and they're committing to me as a resident of that, is to build something that is appropriate for the neighborhood. So in terms of mass, in terms of vehicle traffic, we're not going to do a project that's going to destroy the neighborhood. Sam wouldn't agree to that. Trust me, I won't agree to that.
Can I say
Okay, I
something,
think
Jim?
this is a weird jumping off point then. I would think you would have jumped off
Well,
somewhere else that didn't involve
did
encroaching.
you attend any of the planning? We went to planning and zoning on this project. And
I sat on
they
the call.
they critiqued it several times. We spent money to change that design. We had a meeting with you guys. We changed the design again with the residents. So we've already changed the design several times. By the way, as Jim said earlier, the town doesn't fund our projects. Who's funding this spree down Design
I heard
Avenue?
Margarita tell you were silly to have Mr. Ridberg redo them. You could sketch something and as long as they got the idea, it would be fine. She said you shouldn't be sending this back to the architect every single time.
Well, that's the
That
way
was her
we've always
response.
done it. That's the way they've always accepted it. So unless you know something that I don't know.
Well, I
and I've
heard her
done this-
say it.
Well, I hear people say a lot of
So,
different things.
Mr. Ridberg, why don't you not make new plans, have them sketch something very
Just do
vague
it on the
and.
back of a, like Picasso.
Can we hear from some
Yeah.
other people?
It may be a dumb question. My name's Wendy Force.
Microphone down.
Oh, okay.
There
Yeah,
you
I keep
go.
shrinking. My name's Wendy Force, and I'm actually back in the house that I was born in. I found the deed, the original deed. My father paid $10,000 for the house and had to take out a $5,000 mortgage. I've lived there before the throughway, so that's how old I am. And this may be a dumb question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Since the part of this property is owned by the town, the town has to approve the lease, I guess. So why can't you run it by them before? How much money have you spent on this so far? And you don't even know if the town's going to approve the lease.
That's exactly the point. We've probably spent $50,000 doing
So
this.
why not go to the town? Why not?
We have.
Because we can't go to the town. We can't go to the town to the RTM without specifically telling them we're leasing this to build housing and not showing them what we're building. So we need to come up with,
Well, why can't they give you, say, we're definitely willing to look at this, show us something. You haven't even done that.
That's what we've done already.
Done
Oh,
that
you did, and they
several
said,
times.
it sounds
And,
good.
and we can't ask for a lease to build something that
We
they don't know what we're going to build.
Right,
So we have to show them what we want to build.
okay.
And then they'll put it through the Board of Selectmen for municipal improvement. Then from the Board of Selectmen, it goes to the RTM for a lease, the
So
law
who-
department to
who's-
write a lease.
Where did the $50,000 come from?
We already spent that out of our own
It comes
pocket.
out of our pockets.
Out of
Housing
personally?
Authority, Housing Authority.
Okay, so don't spend any more until you.
We're not going to spend
Okay,
any more
all
until we
right.
get an answer from the town.
Okay, I won't go through the other things, but I just was
Hmm.
curious about that. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Susan Rattray and I live on Strickland Road. And I have some concerns about this project. I think that what you're trying to do is too many units in too small a space that is going to make it dangerous for people on Butler Street, which backs on there. It's going to be dangerous for people who live in a part, if you run through these 48 units and have some of them which are barely 8 feet away from the throughway, I think you're asking for trouble. I think half the size or 3/4 of the size would be a thoughtful idea. The ones that are backing right up onto the throughway are not things that I would want any town employees living in. The other thing I have a concern about is the traffic on Strickland Road. People come back and forth from the station. I don't think anybody has seen 25 miles an hour since the last little green car of driver training has been through there. They speed like mad. It's the Strickland Speedway. And there are incomplete sidewalks on Strickland Road. Where I live, there is absolutely no sidewalk. The sidewalk goes from the center of town up to the lower half of Mill Pond Court. And then it vaporizes and does not reappear until the Historical Society. So you've got a curvy road there, narrow road, and it's dangerous for baby carriages, it's dangerous for dogs, and it is dangerous for even grown-up people. So I think that's another serious consideration, plus the flooding. People who park their cars in that parking lot don't want to have to sell them at a flood sale. So those are several concerns I have. I think you did a beautiful job with the community housing that you have put at the end of Strickland Road, not into the parking lot. That's great. I wouldn't mind seeing more of that, but I think this thing is overkill. Thank you.
Hi, my name
Just
is
a minute.
Adele.
As to the sidewalks, you're absolutely right. And you're absolutely right on the speeding. And I had made notes of that, but that also was in our plan about widening that road and putting in sidewalks to make it safer. And luckily, none of our cars will be parked in the flood zone. They'll be higher up. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Adele Rhoda, and I think I'm in the minority at this meeting. If you don't mind, I'm going to turn so I can face the audience. I live in Glenville, and I am very much in favor of this project, and I'll tell you why.
Don't attack her.
No,
Don't
it's our,
attack-
it's
let
our
her talk.
town.
Let
It's
her- let her
our
talk.
town. And the reason I'm here is because Glenville has been under attack by these individual developers, the same as Central Greenwich, and they're going to be coming to your neighborhoods as well. No, they're not in your neighborhoods yet. There were projects. Well, let me take a step back. What I wanted to say is our problem is 830G. And that problem is not with the town of Greenwich. It's not with the planning and zoning. It is certainly not with these people. It is with the legislature in Hartford. And until we all recognize that, they're going to keep having us be at odds with each other. That's exactly what they want. So we have to fight Hartford. And I think Ryan Fazio could tell us all more about that. He's done an outstanding job getting bipartisan groups together. But 830G is our enemy. We're not each other's enemy. And I think we all agree we want affordable housing. One-bedroom units is not for the people we're trying to help. One-bedroom units turn over and over. If we're trying to help families, they should at least be two-bedroom units. These developers are phonies. These developers are taking money under false pretenses. These developers are taking away properties that should be owned by families and within neighborhoods. A project that happened and was approved on Pembroke Road, it was heart-sickening because the P&Z, as much as good people there wanted to vote against certain things or had questions about certain things, 830G prohibited them. It prohibited us as neighbors from being able to do things. Same things you're concerned about, trees, blasting, flooding. And unless there was an imminent, urgent, and there's all these extreme words, unless they could prove that the dam was going to break tomorrow and people die from flooding, they had to approve it. Regardless of whether the fire truck could get in or whether there's enough water pressure, they have to wait and see. I mean, all these terrible things. So I'm not being very eloquent about it, but we're not each other's enemies. We should be fighting Hartford on 830G. This is a good plan, and if anything, I don't know where you get your money from, but maybe we could help support these people.
I'm sorry, just can I say, really, you took a podium,
Yes.
which was for us.
No, us is the town.
I really think that it's for the village of Coscob and the people that are gonna be affected by this project. And it really was not right or classy to make us victims.
All right, there's no need,
No attacking.
there's no
We're
need
not-
for that.
This is a town meeting. It's not a Coscob Village meeting. It's
You
a
know,
town meeting.
What I think the point she was trying to make is that a day doesn't go by that I don't get a phone call from people who've lived in town a long time, not necessarily homeowners, but renters. And they say, do you have an apartment? My landlord's not renewing my lease. My children go to X school. I can't find anything in town. Do you have a 3-bedroom, a 2-bedroom? Well, because we're not getting our leases renewed. Or a developer has come in and he's bought the 3 houses on my street. And now he's going to tear down, just like they did Benedict Place. They're tearing down 5 different residencies on Benedict Place. And they'll be building a 6-story building. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a commercial zone. They're coming to our neighborhoods. They're going to be in the R12, the R2, the R1 zones. getting well, as long as they own the property, and then they come in with an 830G, say, we're going to develop on Palmer Hill Road. I'm going to buy 3 properties in a row and put up a 6-story building. They can do that. This is what we're fighting. And she's right. Hartford is our enemy. We don't want to fight within our own community. Every neighborhood is at risk at this point. My neighborhood today, your neighborhood tomorrow. We have to unite and realize what the state has done to us. They put a plague on us. And this plague has got to be stopped. And we have to work together to figure it out. Like I say, we're here to work with the community. We don't want to be adversarial. We're not the enemy here.
Just want to add to that, Sam. 830G, I think I mentioned this the last time we met. It's been on the books for 30 years, 30 plus years. It wasn't utilized.
I was on the RTM 30 years ago.
Now look what we have. Because, and I warned about this years ago, 10, 12 years ago, that it was going to happen. And I'm warning it again, that you think, you're fighting our project. This is not our project. This is a town's project. It's the town's land. It's us trying to give a town a way to work toward a moratorium so that they can work toward a plan or change the law that gets them out of this development mirage. And it's terrible. And so don't believe that this is your neighborhood and you're going to be safe, because you're not. And we're just trying to help. We're not trying. I usually can be very forceful trying to use an 830G to push the project along. I'm not pushing this at all. You guys decide what you can do. We decide if we can make it work financially. And if you don't, you're telling the town, you're telling the state, we don't care about affordable housing. So keep 830G on the books and give us something else on top of that. Put a cherry on it. And so, I'm sorry, what? It's absolutely, it's fair, because this is a town's project.
We don't care about it.
I'm telling you, this is a parking lot. The lowest use of land ever from a land use standpoint. I got it. From a land use standpoint, the lowest use of land. So
That sucks. Just not that sucks.
again, I'd like to say this one more time. We're open to ideas. We didn't reject the idea of a smaller project. Okay, so
We have people
there's a line.
that have been standing in line to be recognized, so let's.
Hi, my name is Lucy Von Brockel. I'm from Byram. I'm on District 4's RTM. I used to serve on the Land Use Committee and on the Community Development Block Grant Committee. I have a question about the moratoriums. You guys have some properties that don't qualify for the moratorium that you could renovate and they would count, right?
No,
Yes.
Yeah,
no, we're
so
charging, we're charging.
Next.
But that's not, we're not renovating.
Project.
It's a new construction. It's not renovation. She's talking about renovation.
I'm just saying, if the goal here is to get to the moratorium, and we have some properties that haven't been renovated since the 80s or 90s, would renovating those properties to make them, up to code and up to date, help you get to the moratorium or help the town get to the moratorium?
what property do you have in mind?
Like Agnes Morley and Wilbur Peck,
Agnes Morley is already counted, and Wilbur Peck.
they're accounting
is
towards the
public
10%.
Wilbur Peck is public housing. It's invested. It's counting. That's how you
Counting
have,
towards the moratorium?
5.6%. It's not counted toward a moratorium.
That's what I'm
no.
saying. So,
no,
I'm
we don't
sorry,
invest in our
Mr.
properties
Johnson,
to do.
can I finish what I'm saying? You
Well,
keep
you asked a
interrupting
question,
me.
but go right ahead.
But you're not answering my
I'm
question.
trying to answer your question.
Would these properties, if you renovated them, Agnes Morley,
Answer is
Wilbur
no.
Peck, count towards the
I
moratorium?
just said the answer is no.
They'll count
You just
towards
said
the
yes.
10%.
They already count
They
toward the
already
10%.
counted.
No.
Jeez.
They
One
count towards
benefit
the
to
10%,
doing
but do
Jim,
they
that's
count?
not-
If you
hold
had
on a
not
second.
put a certain amount of money into a property.
$25,000 in a unit has nothing to do with public housing. $25,000. You can take your house and turn it into affordable housing if you're willing to put $25,000 into it and put a deed restriction on it for 40 years.
Yeah.
That's what it takes.
Into a
Our properties are
unit.
already deed restricted.
Right. So just as an aside,
Answer
the
is no.
mission shouldn't just be the moratorium. So if there are properties that haven't been renovated in 30 years, that's another area to invest money in. And earlier you mentioned that you don't have $10 million to buy a property or that you don't make any money, but a couple of years ago, you did have like $8 or $9 million to buy a bunch of small,
Borrow money from a bank.
okay.
This is a
So,
town problem.
right,
Let's-
so I'm
let's
just
understand
saying,
what we're
I'm
saying.
just saying, you can borrow money from a bank to buy properties.
To
You
help the
bought a-
town solve its problem.
You bought
This
a,
is
you
the
bought a
town's
number of
problem, no?
multifamily properties,
That's correct.
right? And I just want to make it clear that you did at some point manage to get that kind of money.
You managed
to
it
do
because
that
just
kind of
like any
thing.
other private entity, we can
Okay,
go to
I'm
a
not
bank and
trying to
borrow
argue
money.
with you.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm trying to
Okay.
get a point across.
Wait,
And the
wait,
point-
Lucy.
Hold on, Jen. Hold on, Jen. The point is, you said two things, and I just want to address it. We have plans, other than the plans you're speaking about.
I know you've got a
And we're
lot of
not going to
plans.
detour our plans because this is a town's problem. This is a town's land. If you want to talk about our development, I'm willing to talk to you about our developments and our development plans. This is
Okay.
a town plan for the town's property and the plan's town, a plan of
I'm sorry,
conservation and
it's your
development.
plan for the town's property. I
No,
just want
it's
to
in the
make that
plan of
clear.
conservation and development.
No, I know the plan of conservation and
So you know
development
that
like
it
the
calls
back of
for
my
the use of
hand.
parking lots for the affordable housing.
I do know that. That's not a dictate, and it doesn't mean that you should be doing whatever you want.
We're not doing
I'm not, I
anything.
just want to point
We don't
out,
have to
I'm
do
actually
this.
very pro affordable housing. I'm pro transit oriented housing. I'm pro, you guys putting money into these things. I want it to be done smartly. I want it to be done with everybody in mind. It's the neighborhood and it's the people who live at these properties. And I wanted to ask you also what the idea was behind the lease. I haven't heard anything. I've heard about a lease, but you guys have a couple of $1 leases with the town. Is that the idea here? Someone else said something about how the town would make money off of this, and I'm
Whoever
not
said
sure that the town would.
Whoever said that misspoke. Because any lease that we get, they're all $1 a year, 99-year
Okay.
leases.
Okay,
So the
thank you.
town makes no money on it.
Okay,
The only
thank you.
benefit is the benefit back to the community for the properties that we
Okay,
develop.
yes, and I know, and I'm perfectly
Whoever
fine
said
with the
that
$1 a year lease.
misspoke.
I just wanted to make sure.
Just
And
like the
then-
boat club get $1 a year leases. The old Greenwich Yacht Club, the Minus Boat Club.
Yeah,
the
no,
the
there are a
Byron
lot of
Boat
them.
Club, all $1 a year leases.
John's still here. Okay, I think that's it for me. Thank you.
I'm Janice Merrill. I'm loud. Also from Coscop. Hi.
Good evening.
You already know what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it to them too. I, for 3 years, have been Coscop's representative on the highway renovation project. I have learned all about sound and highways, and I know you can hear the highway from Butler, and I can on Laughlin. And I also have learned that if you were to build the project as is, you may scale it back. If you don't scale it back, if you take out the rock structure, if you take out the trees, those trees don't belong to the town. We all know those belong to the highway. Behind it, you're proposing to put another parking lot in. There's some houses there. So those trees we can't count on. You remove those trees, you remove the rock, you put up a flat building like that, and you've got something that's going to zing the sound right over into your backyard and your backyard and my backyard, and we are not going to be happy.
And I don't want you unhappy.
Thank you, thank you. I appreciate that. And I do want to make a plug. I know somebody at one of the meetings said, oh, that native, that scrub there, one person's scrub is another person's native plant.
Yeah.
And I want to preserve the tree canopy, and those trees, you can pretty much count on the highway cutting those down at some point. So,
I might add that we had a meeting with you and Susan, and we got some interesting comments back and suggestions. We seriously are considering that discussion that we had,
thank you.
and it had a big input on Mr. Johnson and I. So I think we agree more of what you wanted at that meeting. So
I applaud something that fits over the
yeah,
parking
so
lot.
I mean, we're on
Going
the same.
beyond it,
We've
not so
come
keen.
to, I think we're on the same page. So
Okay.
moving forward, the discussion that we had will be incorporated in our future plans. Just to rest assured of that.
Thank you.
I'll clap on her first.
Hi, good evening. My name is Eileen Duncan. I live at 100 Strickland Road, which is right across from this development.
I do have a question in regards to how you do get funding. How does Greenwich Communities get funding? Where does your money come
For
from?
which project? It's a
For,
multitude of financing, just like the rest of the world.
okay, what about the Affordable Housing Trust Fund? Do you get money from
No.
that? No.
Affordable Housing Trust Fund doesn't give money away, they loan money. We can get money cheaper in the open market than they're loaning it at, so it doesn't benefit us, Housing Trust Fund.
And Sam, I was going to make this point before. People aren't aware. We've never done it. But the town charter gives us the authority to issue bonds. And we've never done that. As I said earlier, I chaired the finance committee and I'm not looking to have the housing authority start issuing housing bonds. We have talked about as a potential financing mode, having the BT issue bonds and loan the money. But that would only be if it were at a lower price. The other housing we
How
build
long they've
is
been waiting?
either funded
And they
through
wanna-
tax credit programs, the
All right,
HUD
you-
funding,
you tell them that.
funding through CHAFA, which is the state of Connecticut.
Well,
That's
these-
where most of our
Banks.
public and banks and private banks.
Okay.
So
So everything is, I mean, like CHAFA, HUD, these are all publicly funded entities.
And tax credits.
Partially public funded, other than our
Majority.
banks.
So when you're saying that our
Say
tax dollars
partially,
don't
we
pay
have
for
public
these, they
housing, which is
do.
funded.
Federal money does, yes.
And we all pay federal taxes.
Right, so
So,
what's
yes.
the point?
Because you were saying before that our tax dollars do not pay for
Your
this.
local tax, your local tax dollars
there's nothing in the.
has
budget
nothing
that
to do
comes
with
us.
Okay.
Everybody
but
in the entire
HUD,
state pays that.
CHAFA, right, are these,
The entire state pays that.
okay, exactly, and so do we.
So,
some
what's the
of our-
point? Again,
And
like,
can
Well,
I
that's what I
make
was
the
just
point
asking,
publicly?
because-
Sam
let's stop.
has brought Greenwich more than its fair share of state funding. He
Okay.
has done an outstanding job on that. As, again, another just little plug for Ryan, I think we would have potentially a new source of state funding if this were a transit-oriented development program.
That's a different conversation, but let's
Okay,
finish. Yeah.
so I've been on several of these different meetings in regards to planning and zoning, and when different issues had come up, they were knocked down. One of the issues that came up was, would you be able to, make the project smaller? We were said no, because that would not be physically, financially appealing. That wouldn't work. We need to have the 48 units. So now we're hearing that you're saying that now you may be able to downsize the project, correct? Yes, no? So initially, it's the 4 buildings with 48 units.
if we were going to go word by word of what happened at the original meeting, we had said, if you transcribed it, that we would have to look at the numbers, whether 48 or less would be viable. Not that we will absolutely bed in stone on 48 units. They want us to put a coffee shop in. We're not in the
Marion,
commercial-
I
we're not in
heard
a
that.
commercial business to run a coffee shop.
No, I understand, but I remember a lot of people were asking if you could downsize it, and you said no.
I don't think
You
we,
said financially, this is not.
We don't have a number that the building costs. We
Okay.
can't tell you how we can finance the building when we don't know what the building could cost when we haven't done that. We haven't reached that point. We
Okay,
have a building that we've designed, that we've offered. And we don't know what it costs.
and we have to have a starting point. So this was the starting point, and now we're getting down to the brass tacks of it.
okay, brass tacks. Also too, when several times the flooding on Strickland Road has come up, and in regards to emergency vehicles coming through, and it was, it's just a portion of it is in the flood zone. Now, a lot of these times when the flood comes in, the road is actually closed.
Exactly, I agree.
Okay, so now you're on GEMS, the Board of GEMS, we've heard that several times. Are emergency vehicles able to come through when the road is closed?
There's not, our building would be on the opposite end where they would have access.
So what?
Strickland Road, when it's closed, it's closed. It's flooded, it's flooded. Nothing
Okay,
can get through.
perfect. So what I'm saying is that emergency vehicles will have to go up and around and over and down to
For
get to
what
that
reason?
actual. Well, say if you had a fire,
Excuse me,
for emergency vehicles, say if you
the
had
fire
a
department
fire.
is on the western side of town also. Ambulances
They
on,
could come right down Strickland
ambulances-
Road on a regular,
from where? From
right, the
Costco?
Costco Fire
Right,
Station.
Costco Fire, they can get the railroad side of the parking lot very easily. And our buildings are 2 stories above the flood.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying when the road is closed to get emergency vehicles through, the road is closed, the road is closed. You're not gonna be able to get those emergency vehicles in. You're gonna have to go up and around and down and over to get to them.
But isn't that true today?
They're not going to go.
Exactly, but I'm not putting the 48
I-
unit complex.
I live in
right
the
there.
neighborhood. I
do
used to run tag. Okay?
Okay.
So when we had the Sandy flooding, we were out. My very first night at tag, I got the call from the town, we're afraid the Glenville Dam's going to break. Can you send the big commuter buses down there? If Strickland Road is closed, I should point out, I worked for Malcolm Baldridge at the Commerce Department the day the I-95 bridge fell. So I know about traffic on Strickland Road. What's going to happen if Strickland Road is closed? Laughlin has speed bumps. So the fire department, the police, GEMS don't go up Laughlin. What they do is they come up and over Butler all the time.
Okay, so up and over Butler, when you're having an emergency, how much longer is that gonna take? Is that feasible to have? Do you really care now of these tenants that
Well,
you're
if our buildings are on
putting-
fire, we have sprinkler systems in them.
And what if they don't work? And what if you have somebody that has a heart attack? And, okay. It is a safety issue.
You want to,
So-
we have some other people that want to.
Okay, quick, this is quick, and this is what I have to say. Several times, the NIMBY narrative has been thrown out there. I actually think that it's not that narrative. The narrative, I feel, is that Greenwich communities and town officials are overzealous and in trying to get their 10% mandated affordable housing at any cost. Safety, safety, environment, traffic, you don't care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, if you can just hold on, we have a couple of people online that want to come in and ask a question.
Okay, so first we have Mark Gentile or Gentile. If you can unmute yourself, you're able to talk.
Go ahead, Mark.
How are you? First of all, thank you everyone for, especially the panel, for all of your time and dedication to the good of all of us people here in the neighborhood. I have a question specifically about the meeting opened, and this was sort of addressed earlier, but the meeting opened with us talking about, or the panel talking about police, fire, and teachers housing. And as soon as I heard that, I perked right up. I said, wow, that's great. Fire, police, firemen, and teachers. And then I sort of let it marinate a little bit, and I said, is that really who's going to be living in those houses? Policemen, firemen, and teachers? What, where did that come from? And where's that going to take us?
Jim, you brought it up.
Okay. I think if you look at what will be the income requirements, and I never implied that it is strictly going to be town employees, but a starting police officer, a starting fireman, a starting teacher with a BA will be within the income limits. They will probably income limit out after 5 or 6 years. Of this, I used to serve on the Labor Contracts Committee for the RTM. So they will income limit out. Tony, you want to give?
I guess, let me just add to that. If you're saying that priority will be given to those people, priority will be given to policemen, firemen, teachers in the community that are making the call to the gentleman that, mentioned that he was getting calls about, I live in town, I can't find affordable housing. Will any priority go to people who have been in the community for a long time that work in services for the community.
Yes, hello, this is Tony Johnson. What we have in our housing plan, which we operate from, allows us to have a preference for people who work or live in the town of Greenwich as first priority in housing. Doesn't say anything about teachers, doesn't say anything about firemen. It says people who live or work in the town of Greenwich. And that's what we operate from.
We now have, I will unmute Melissa Lamkin. You're now able to speak. If you could unmute yourself, please. And you have, if you could keep it to 2 minutes, that would be great. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you very much. Melissa Lamkin. I live in Coscob at 100 Strickland Road. My question is simple. Have you actually done a traffic study? The intersection of Strickland Road and Sound Shore Drive, as it stands, is treacherous. And whenever there's traffic on I-95 North, people get off the highway and come through that intersection and down Strickland Road. I'm
I
just
agree.
curious, has a traffic study been done? Because that intersection is very difficult.
You're absolutely right, and that is part of the process, and that's a requirement that's going to be on the application that we have to perform a traffic study as, along with the engineering, drainage, all the other aspects of it. So a traffic study will be done and will have to be done.
Thank you.
Okay. And the last person we have online is Peter Alexander, and I will allow you to talk. Please unmute yourself, and you have 2 minutes.
I promise I won't be 2 minutes. It's as long as you can hear me, can you?
Go ahead, Peter. We can hear you.
Stan.
Turn down your radio. Oh, your volume.
How about now?
Go ahead.
Sam, I want to congratulate you to really be following in the footsteps of Rafe Pomerantz, who started affordable housing in the country in Armstrong Court. He was an amazing mentor of mine, and I appreciate what you're trying to do. But I also, listening to this conversation tonight, we referred to the plan of conservation and development. It's not a plan. That's a state mandate that tries to get to this percent and that percent. I think the final point I want to make is that we are being designed by the lawyers, and I think we should put the lawyers to work to question here, especially in New England, the legality and take it to the Supreme Court, deciding 10% is the right number. What's the right number for lawyers per capita? Keep on going, bro. I'm on your side, but I think we need to get rid of the state planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter, you have the floor.
Good evening. I do
The
want
mic, bring the mic up, Peter.
mic up. How's that? I do want to thank you for all you do for the town of Greenwich. I spent 20 years on the RTM. I just resigned because we're moving from District 8 Coscob over to District 6.
They have an opening.
Well, I've heard, and my wife has heard. So I worked on 3 plans of conservation and development, and with all due respect to Mr. Alexander, those are real plans. The P&Z staff and other departments put a lot of time and effort into writing those plans. I encourage everyone to read just the housing chapter of the current POCD. That's the 2019 POCD. It is excellent, and it does, in fact, call for projects like this one. And it was overwhelmingly approved by the RTM, which means it is the town's plan. So now I, I have been working on affordable housing now. I was on the committee that formed the affordable, that wrote the affordable housing plan about 4 or 5 years ago. And then the committee that wrote the affordable housing trust. And by the way, they're making remarkable progress. It doesn't affect you. It deals with private developers, but they're doing great work. But I did want to say that having worked in this realm now for some years, I have taken to, whenever I go into a shop in Greenwich, whether it's a barber shop or the dry cleaners or a restaurant, or even a doctor's office, or a car dealership, I always ask the people at the counter, do you live in the town of Greenwich? And almost invariably, they don't. You know, 100 years ago, everyone who worked in the town of Greenwich lived in the town of Greenwich. Today, a very small percentage of the people who have, jobs like behind the counter or a waiter at a restaurant, they all have to commute to work. And I often ask, if you could live in the town of Greenwich, if you could afford to live in the town of Greenwich, would you want to live in the town of Greenwich? And almost always they say yes. So, it's strange that we have reached a point where people can't live in the town where they work. It's sad. And therefore, I fully support your efforts here. I think this is a fine plan. And so we're moving to the Gables in Old Greenwich. And I remember right by the Civic Center, I remember the outcry when that was proposed. People just screamed. They showed up at all the meetings. Today, that development is actually supporting the retailers in Old Greenwich. And you could set up your lawn chair in the driveway and you wouldn't get run over for an hour. It's not a traffic problem. And if this gets built, mark my word, people will wonder what was all the excitement about. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Step right up.
Yeah, put your chair on Strickland.
Good evening. My name is Ern Shermer. I've been in Costco for 20 years plus. I'm a bit unusual because I walk 2,000 miles and I bicycle 3,000 miles in our town every year. Costco is an ideal situation for walkable, make things easier. We have too much traffic in Costco already. So my point about this project is, first of all, thank you for all the work you do. It's enormous, so many hours and so on, so many papers we don't see, so it's highly appreciated. I commend you for holding this meeting tonight. I love the aspect of freedom of speech, not cutting us off after 2 or 3 minutes, or even being willing to go a bit into an exchange so that really the community has a chance to say every word that they really feel they need to say. So thank you so much for that. It's just not really taken for granted. Going forward, I'd just like to leave you with 2, 3 thoughts, please. Number one, you heard it before, the traffic study. As a taxpayer, I'm very, very, very tired about this town, that traffic studies are always done so that the result is it will not materially change, how things are being proposed. It also has another boring ring to it. It's always a party from out of town. And I'm not going to go into specifics because otherwise we get distracted. The 2, 3, 4 last traffic studies that I looked at from out of town, quote unquote, experts, they did not really include feedback from the directly impacted neighbors. And that is just not really the right way to proceed. The other thing was, in one significant case, it was even done at the exactly wrong time of the year. I'm not saying it was done intentionally, but the results obviously were not really very helpful. The other thing about these traffic studies is this one. You really want them in 3D. I know money, costs, time, and these type of things. Goes to my second point. Please do an above average job in communicating and illustrate what you do. Just when I came in, people couldn't even understand where is north, east, west on this layout. In traffic studies, or when you describe a project, it's not complicated. We have advanced software. It's so easy. But we want to see where the crosswalks are, whether or not there's traffic lights, whether there's stop signs, whether there's speed control cameras, where exactly the sidewalks are, so we get a sense how the vehicles move in and out, and whether or not they have dark angles and then jeopardize dog walkers and strollers and these type of things. The third point I have is that parking lot, to do something better with it. Of course, I welcome the idea. What exactly is better? Listen to the neighbors and all the voices, and please take your time and consider that very, very carefully. I will just say this, as a biker and walker or a Metro North person, it is very nice to bicycle to the train to give a bit, relief to traffic, these things. It's even much nicer to go into Coscob Park. Now we have a problem because that intersection is really dangerous, and equally is the passage under Metro North. Because when there is a lot of people just jump into the street and whatever. And I've also seen, not recently, but I've seen a whole bunch of tall vehicles that got stuck under the bridge. Understand that's Metro North and it's state property and it's complex and whatever. But somehow with the town, you need to figure this out. We can do better around that Coscob train station. So if you bring more people there, more vehicles there, then you have a little duty to help along as well. So access to Coscob Park, where there's so much going on. It's a fabulous park. I mean, go and have a dinner.
I helped develop it.
Yeah, right. So thank you for that, right? It's a beauty. But then let's get there and back home after sunset or so in a safer way, right? If these people live there. I did mention communications. I apologize. It's overwhelming to try to stay a little bit, atop of developments and all these type of things. And I have not studied your website. But Mr. Romeo, you do have my email from mid-March. I'd really like to understand from the housing, what is under your portfolio, how many people really have jobs in town, and how steady is that picture? And we have the reality that people now work differently. There is home office. Yes, whether or not they're going to be called physically back in the office. And yes, we know that for certain jobs, if you're a waiter in the restaurant, you have to be in the restaurant. You can't do that from home. But I think it would be very helpful, to understand a bit better what are the dynamics in terms when we say we want people to live and feel, work and live in Greenwich. Are we actually really achieving that? Because overall, when we invite, and I do really think the average American person uses really more a car than their legs to move around. We're a big nation, we go to many places. But every unit, every house, every development that we add to this town will bring more vehicles. And Coscob, the latest number I have, I don't have exact statistical evidence, but we have 25,000, 27,000 vehicles going up and down the central area of Coscob. So without traffic light improvements, without thinking about better moving type of traffic, what is the mobility for people to get to work or to school or to the library or whatever it is, somebody ultimately needs to answer, can we afford 50,000 cars, 40,000 cars? We don't know. So please help with communications and also help with getting to this place safely, coming out of this place safely, so that we all can really enjoy Greenwich so much. Thank you for everything.
Hi, David Hayes. Just one very quick question. We need to get to 10%. What's the number currently?
5.7.
5.7. Okay, so ways to go. All right, thank you.
We need double what we have now almost.
I could have told him that. Good afternoon. I also thank you all for coming out. This is a really nice, oh, I'm sorry, it's Peter Quigley. I'm a 20-year resident, 15 years on the 5 terms on the RTM. I was on Peterburg's Land Use Committee once as vice chair. I was a point person for flooding, drainage, environmental management. I've been through all the programs, Weston Middle School, MISA, right on down. So I'm a student, I consider my a student, and I thought this was a P and Z meeting, so you wonder why I may not show
You
up.
got a
It's-
list of stuff there you're gonna go through?
I'm not going to go through it, but I'm going to
Okay.
read you just one paragraph,
go ahead.
okay? And interestingly, I applaud the mission and the sincerity of this group, and I welcome anyone to call or email me if you have the interest of the information that I'm going to exchange here today. I brought a GIS map. Of course, you've all seen it. It's 4-color. It's downstairs in the basement, and it shows the colors of the 7 or 8 watersheds here in Greenwich. This town is under flood. And for 60 years, since the creation of the Flood and Erosion Control Board in 1956, flooding's getting worse. So tell me about the experts that are fixing things. They are not. This is the wrong location. A pretty nice design, because you guys do design work, and to the merit of the program, they're really nice, but you're in the wrong location.
How's it gonna add to the flooding?
You're adjacent of a FEMA flood zone, of a flood zone that wasn't measured until 10 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. You don't know how it's expanded. So you're in a FEMA flood zone, first of all. Did you read the newspaper this morning? Did you read the Greenwich Time, anyone? Huh? No.
What
Did you
was
read
in it?
about Grass Island? I will read you just, I
About
had
the
3
sewer plant?
Yeah.
What about it?
I'm not here to contend.
Well,
If you'd like
just know what your
information,
point is.
to Mr. Butel, he knows I'm a reasonable guy. If you'd like to have a conversation, I know Don Fortunato well.
Shouldn't be the place for it.
Well, it is.
No, let's hear what you,
At this site, does the town even have capacity to take the mix of sewage and stormwater away where the combination of both may already flood Old Town pumping stations and a place called Grass Island? I wrote this 2 weeks ago, probably 5 years ago. Now, let me finish the one paragraph, okay? If I can come back up on it. These are not 100-year storm events anymore, but 1, 2, 10, and 20-year events flooding the town. How many times? 3 or 4 times in the last 6 months? Okay, it's going to get worse. Does the town have capacity to take what is the illegal commingling of sewage and stormwater away at these sites? It will be the question you'll see me asking P and Z at every one of these big
it is
meetings.
illegal to put stormwater
It
into the sewage.
clearly
set.
is.
It is
And there's
illegal.
an MS4 permit that's been afforded the responsibility of this town to take care of. To today's paper,
And that's why the town got sued 30 years ago.
they got 2. There was
And
2 of
and
them.
we had to upgrade
20
$50
years
million
ago.
project.
That's correct. Now,
The
let me
sewer plant.
finish. Okay. Listen, I'm there.
I
I'm
am
a
too.
student.
I know more
I
about it
don't.
than you
I'm
think.
not an expert. I'm just a student. You should hear some of the other things I've got here, but I'll leave it. By today's newspaper, it will take millions and years to fix the capacity of Grass Island facility, in my opinion. But read the paper this morning for the opinion
So
of the
my
DPW.
point
So you're
exactly,
putting
Peter.
a project in here that you've got to check
Right.
seriously.
So where does,
Let me finish. Can I finish, please?
Go ahead.
I'm happy to meet with you anytime. You are in a FEMA flood zone. Do you know what you're being regulated by? Do you think they're town regulations?
do you want an answer or do you want to?
Yeah, they're federal regulations. It's a FEMA federal, so you're going to be measured by soil testing of all the soils there. If you haven't done it, you might as well start doing it.
Part of the
for-
process.
For the environmental, but also the drainage capacity of that
Part of the
area.
engineering process.
You got it. I think you should
We-
start
we-
there.
We understand that.
Have you done it?
But we're not there yet.
Okay.
But
So
here's
I
the
will
thing.
leave with that
You-
thought.
you-
I have
you-
some other thoughts as well as
you-
locations, but it,
Excuse me.
well, of
You
course it
made-
isn't. That's why it's a parking lot. No one can
That's
build
just-
there.
You made my point about 830G.
Pardon me? I'm not trying to be
You just made
argumentative.
my
I'm-
point.
I said at the
You made my
merits of the
point
project.
about flood and erosion. And just look what the state has told us now. We have probably 1,250 units of housing. We need to, under the state mandate, have another
The
1,250.
state,
By state mandate.
the
So,
state
as
needs
mandated.
lawyers to combat that. And let me explain.
Well, the
This
state-
is for the 830G, a health, safety, and a wetlands FEMA
Exactly.
zone issue that bypasses 830G. It did it at the ironworks, by the way, just so you know that. They took it to court and they won.
And they're back.
And they won.
They're
They won.
back.
They're trying to get back,
84
but they won in
units.
court.
84
okay?
units.
But you know they won in court.
Yeah,
The
they're-
neighborhood,
they'll be
okay?
back, though.
The neighborhood won in court
So the
because it
flood and
includes
erosion-
damage to wetlands and to the case of the town of Greenwich, because of the build-out, the impervious surfaces being built out in this town is making it a floodplain. And the flooding's gonna get worse and worse. I want people to hear this.
And every
So
project
that
that
when
we
you
do,
don't
we-
attend to this, when
we-
you don't fix and
we don't
fund
do
what
it-
needs to be done,
We make sure that that's all been taken care of.
Well, I'm gonna say.
Every one of our projects.
glad
We
you
put
are-
in rain
well,
gardens.
I'm happy to
We
help.
mitigate it
I'm
anyway.
happy to help because we have a group of people that could be providing solutions on how to make it all work.
Okay.
Interestingly.
Thank you.
No one wants to hear us, but I leave you with those thoughts.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Please step up to the microphone and state your name.
I can't hear.
Come to the microphone.
I
No, step up.
No, you have to go to the microphone so the people on Zoom can hear you.
Say something. First of all, you said.
Walk up to the microphone.
I think, I'm just asking questions. I don't want to do this, I'll say it for the fourth time. First of all, you mentioned you're building this for the so employees of the town can live there.
Greenwich residents,
Possibly.
Greenwich
Now,
residents.
wasn't that said for Wilbur Peck Court and Armstrong Court, that it was years ago for employees of the town to make it easier for them to live in Greenwich? Wasn't years ago. Well, I think it was said years ago. My question is, how many town employees live in Wilbur Peck Court and Armstrong Court? Because you're saying, I think the same thing's going to go on with this new project. It's for first
Greenwich-
choice for
Greenwich
town
residents.
employees.
Greenwich residents. Greenwich residents
We'll
come has a preferential preference over anybody else.
Yes, Wilbur Peck
How
could
many
never-
town employees live in these areas?
We can get you the answer, but we know where people work and live, live in our housing. But to answer your question, Wilbur Peck would have never been a town designated toward town employees because it couldn't. It's a federal project. And you have to live there based on your income. So it could have never, ever been sold as housing for police or firemen or teachers.
But Armstrong Court was, is
Armstrong
that,
Court is an affordable housing development, which is different set of rules and regulations. And so, again, if they applied there, depending on their income, they could live there, correct? And all of our housing, though, still, as I said earlier, has a preference for
can you
residents.
tell me a percentage of people that work in the town
Well, I
that
don't
live?
have that
You don't
here,
have
but
that.
we can get that for you.
All right, so that's the
But
answer to
your
that.
point
You
of
don't
that
have it.
is what?
You also just mentioned, that's my first question, how many employees actually live in these areas? We don't know that. The second one is, I live there, it's highly, highly congested. It's tremendous traffic, all the way from I-95 to US 1. At key areas, you can't get out of your parking lot, your driveway. It's tremendous traffic. The turn there on South Shore to Strickland, I have an SUV, it's not even a big one. I really am afraid when I make that turn. It's so busy all the time, it's extraordinarily tight, as you know. So
That would be
then,
one.
but the other thing that I wanted to say, and again, I'm not good at this, I don't like it, you just mentioned it's just a parking lot. I think I heard you say that.
I said, it's what I said, and I'll say it again, was that the use of land as a parking lot
Right.
is the lowest possible use of land.
Now, I came out this morning at 8 o'clock. That parking lot was 3/4 filled. The rest was down at day parking, I say. These are men and women, I live there, that take that train, park their cars 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. They come home at 9 o'clock at night.
Where are those people that ride Metro North, that live and pay tax in Greenwich? Where are they going to go with their
We're not taking the
parking lot?
parking.
If
I-
you're
I'm not
taking
even
that
sure-
parking lot away, aren't you?
No, we're not.
There will be,
commuters
there
be able
will
to
be a
park there with the
disruption.
building?
There will be a disruption to that parking lot for commuters while we're doing construction. But ultimately, the parking spaces return to commuters.
So you will leave that park with parking spaces, at least 100 spaces for the commuters?
Correct.
At least 100?
Yeah.
I don't know what the number is. but
Right
it's-
now,
Yeah.
that parking lot is not in compliance
It's not legal.
with the parking
Because that was my
requirement.
concern, the people that I know that travel to Manhattan that need that, where are they going to park their cars when they go to work at 5 o'clock in the morning, when they come home at 9 o'clock at night?
Well, we're not taking the parking lot to answer
During
the
the
question.
construction, there'll be a disruption.
That was my question, and I thank
Right.
you.
Just
Okay, let's
ask
not
a
do this
question
again.
about that. So you earlier said there's not an underground parking. So then where is the commuter parking and where is the
It's
resident
gonna be
parking?
right where it is now,
And then the
be
resident
above it.
parking is where?
above it.
So there's a platform above
I
it,
bet it'd be 2 stories above it.
okay, and then 2 stories of living
Well,
space.
2 stories above the parking lot. Our parking will be separate from the town parking.
Right, so
And
then
the
there's,
town parking will be where it is right now.
town parking stays where it was. There was never an underground parking
Never,
discussed?
ever. I don't know where that came from.
I don't know either. The early
You
P
can't
and Z
dig that
pre-app
deep without
meeting, I
hitting
think.
Long Island Sound.
Right, exactly. So then, just to be sure, there's a platform above the commuter parking, and that is the resident parking. And then above that, there's
Another.
how many stories?
One more.
Just 1 story. So all of these 2-bedroom units are 1 story.
Was it one
No,
or two? Rick?
2.
2.
2, so then there's 2 stories. So it's basically 4 stories, right? Am I doing the math?
Where's 4?
Well, you have the parking lot, then you have the next parking lot, and then you have 2 stories of residence.
The
If there's-
residents parking are all together on the same levels.
Mhm. And.
2 stories above the ground.
Okay. But
We got the
that's
parking
so
lot,
That's 4 stories.
our properties, and then more properties.
Mhm.
No, it's
So-
4 stories.
4 stories.
Yeah.
Is that it?
One quick thing, sorry. Sorry. Just Jen Lozina, I live in Coscop. I appreciate everything you're doing. The plan is beautiful. I think it's too big. My concern, Coscop Park is very utilized 3 seasons a year between lacrosse and soccer. It's a heavily trafficked area. Commuters from Metro North, it's a tight turn. I know you're gonna widen it. I think flood zone, all the different things. I kind of think if you're not doing the 830G and you do the proper routes through PZ&G, you might get shut down. That's kind of a thought I'm thinking. If that gets shut down, are you gonna refile as an 830G?
No, I'm not gonna waste any more of
Okay.
our money on it. If the town doesn't step forward at this point and give us some indication that there's a possibility of us getting a lease, then there's no reason for us to continue putting money down this rabbit hole.
Okay.
And again, like I say, we're not the enemy here. We want to
Thank you.
work with the residents. I'm a resident myself. I'm a taxpayer. I will do nothing to harm the town.
Can you?
We
can
want to
you-
work with you
Can
people.
you inform us of one more thing before we go? Coscott Park is a beautiful park, right? What did the town offer the state on behalf of building that parking lot? Do you want to talk about that?
$3 in housing.
How many,
Yeah.
how many units of
20,
housing?
21 units of housing was supposed to be on Coscott Park.
I don't know if you know that.
In exchange for Cosper Cut.
Correct.
And
Coscott,
$3.
you gave up 21 units of housing that should have been there. And it was created a park. And again, nobody said shouldn't have been a park. It's a beautiful park. But the point of it is the town never made good on the 21 units either.
And I might add, the town appropriated $5 million for the demolition of the Coscott power plant, which I stopped, and got the state of Connecticut to pay for the demolition of the Coscott power plant. Like I say, I was a chairman of the land use committee in RTM for over 20 years, and I helped develop that park.
Can you help name one of the buildings after your friend?
And we did name the soccer field after our former state senator, Benny Benvenuto, who was very instrumental in getting that property and the pump station, which we now have the senior housing there, not housing, but they're taking a daycare center. But again, what we want to do is help benefit the town. We're not the enemy. We'll work with you. If there's any way possible that we can make this project work, we'll sit down, we'll make it work. If the finances aren't there, we'll just roll up and take our losses and move on to our next project. We do have 3 other projects, and we're capable of the property that we maintain and own right now. We can build another 350 units of affordable housing here in the town, both for seniors and for workforce. So we're going to be doing that. So this project, again, like I say, is on our list to try to help the town stop the madness, take that hammer out of the developers. Because after 40 years, every unit that the developer is building right now goes right back to market rate. So what the developers are doing, they're building institutional wealth for their families. And that's the bottom line. And we're going to be left holding the bag. I'm not going to be here 40 years from now. I'm going to be someplace else. But our families are going to be here. Our grandchildren will be here. And again, I don't know what they're going to do because once they run out of the downtown section, they're moving north and south into the suburbs. And if anybody watched Laura Ingraham last night, she laid it out pretty carefully about they're coming into the suburbs. And believe you me, they're coming. So if there's nothing else, I want to thank you all.
I just
Okay.
want to say, because you've said many times tonight, you're not the enemy, and we don't think you are, but we're not the enemy either.
No, I don't think you are either.
And
We
we
want to
have,
work together.
as neighbors, we have legitimate concerns around safety and the
And that's why-
flooding and everything else. Our concerns are not shallow. They are based in concern for our neighborhood safety and our lifestyle.
And that's why we're here tonight, to find out what your concerns are. Planning and zoning, every one of your concerns is part of the normal process that planning and zoning has to review. Traffic safety, drainage, you name it, it's all on the checklist for planning and zoning.
Thank you.
So if there's nothing else, I want to thank you and good evening.